Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Tim, and welcome to a Casualform first ever tutorial. As you probably read from the title, I'll be going over how I made the Doctor Strange inspired magic shield effect, as you can see in the clip, made purely in After Effects. So for this tutorial, we're just going to focus on the shield itself. We won't be worrying about the other effects that you probably saw in the original clip, especially particle systems, because they take a while to set up. Alright, let's jump in to After Effects. Alright, so we're in After Effects, so let's go ahead and I usually just make some folders. This just helps me, you know, like stay organized. Media comps. Alright, I think that's all we need for now. So we're gonna go here to make a new composition. We're just gonna call this shield. And then just for the shield, we're gonna make the height and width, or for the height, 1440. So we're gonna have a resolution of 2560 by 1440. This is just for the shield. This will make sense later. So for now, we're just gonna do a 2560 by 1440p composition with a frame rate of 23.976, because that's the frame rate that we use to shoot with the camera. And it's always good to keep the frame rate consistent. So that should be good. So we've made that. First thing I do is we're gonna make a grid just for reference. So go down here and then proportional grid. So that's, you're gonna have these like green lines that show up. If it doesn't look like that, what you can do is you can go to the file, no, not file, preferences, grids and guides, proportional grid. Here we go. Horizontal 8, vertical 6. So that should be good. So now you've got that set up. What I'll do first is to make a new text. For now, just type whatever. The font that I used actually for the shield was Dovahkiin. Really, you can use whatever the hell you want, but I thought this looked kind of cool for the shield. If you don't have this workspace, by the way, it's just the default effects workspace, in case this layout looks a little bit different. I'm just gonna change the spacing a little bit. 400. So 100 pixels in font, and that should be good. So now I'm going to select the layer, and what I'm going to do is right click it, transform, center anchor point and layer content. That's going to bring the anchor point to the very center of the layer, and then right click again, transform, and click center and view. Sweet, so it's right in the middle. Right now I'm doing the circumference of the circle pattern. So the shield is a circle, right? So imagine if you sort of cut the circle and then roll it in a straight line, and then it leaves like a straight pattern, if you know what I mean. It's like unrolling a circle. I probably explained that really badly, but this will make sense. We're just gonna right click on the layer and then press Control D. That'll duplicate the layer. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna drop it down. This doesn't have to be perfect, but just roughly. I'm using the arrow keys to make slight adjustments, and then we're just gonna go ahead and decrease the font size to about 50. That looks good. I'm actually gonna decrease the spacing to 200 more. I might make a few more changes later. So this is just rough for now. We're gonna click on that bottom text layer, Control D again to duplicate, and then we're gonna bring it up to about a quarter, right around there. That looks pretty good. But I'm going to make the font slightly smaller. I might actually make that a bit smaller as well. Maybe 45. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this bottom layer, text layer, just offset it just a little bit. Now we're going to make the lines that you kind of see in the shield. Create a new layer, new, and then solid. We'll just make this white. Comp size, we're going to name it line. What we're going to do is we're going to just shrink it. We're just going to make this line here. We're going to drag it about here. About a quarter of this rectangle here. We're going to duplicate that line. We're going to move it up about there, so there's a little bit of equal spacing. We're going to duplicate that line again, and push it up. Now we're gonna duplicate it again. We're gonna move it down around here. We're gonna make this line smaller as well. How's that looking? And then we're gonna go ahead and duplicate that line one more time, and then we're gonna move it up to keep it so that I'm moving it up and down straight. I'm holding shift while I move it so it goes perfectly straight up. Alright, so we're gonna move that just under this text here. Alright, so that should make our circle pattern. We will pre-compose this, so right click with all the layers selected, pre-comp, just call it circle pattern. You can name it anything you want as long as you name them so you know what they are. Move attributes to the new composition. Yep. So now we can turn off this proportional grid now, and then we're gonna click on this circle pattern layer that we created, and we're gonna do polar coordinates. This is what's gonna turn this pattern into a circle. So we're gonna go to type of conversion, rectipolar, interpolation 100. Now this isn't the whole shield. We still have this inner layer to fill in, so we're gonna do that. And this is why I said earlier to make a larger composition than usual, because the pattern doesn't actually fill the whole composition. It only fills just a little bit of it. But once we send it into a smaller composition, this is going to look nice and large, and you can do like close-ups of the shield and it won't look so pixelated. So there's that. We're going to go up here to the rectangle tool. We're going to hit Q until we get a rounded rectangle tool, and we're going to change the stroke width to just 1 pixel. If this doesn't look like what it looks like here, just alt click to go through the options. So for here we don't want any fill, and we just want a single solid stroke, and make it white. We're gonna try and get it in the center as much as we can. Actually, we have proportional grids. What am I doing? Alright, so just line up your cursor just in the center as much as you can. Let's see if we can zoom here actually. And then we're gonna click, hold control, then shift, so we get a perfectly nice square right around here. And then we can easily adjust the size of this rectangle if need be. So right around here is good. Sweet. So now we're gonna go ahead and add an ellipse, and this will be, we're gonna go to the ellipse path, and we're gonna change the size of this as well to about right here is good. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add a polystar layer, and then we're gonna go in and change the inner and outer radius. 125 for the inner and outer radius. Then we're going to add another polystar path. This time we're going to adjust the size again. The inner and outer radius 265 looks good here. You can really customize how you want your shield to look like. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. So go ahead and adjust it the way you want. Alright, so we've got our shapes in. Next thing we need to do is add a stroke to these shapes. So if we go down, let's see, we're just gonna click here and just 1. Let's see how that looks. Alright, cool. So now the last thing we have to do is, let's go ahead and clean this up a bit. Rectangle. Alright, next thing we need to add is 1 repeater. Okay, this looks a little bit weird. We're going to go ahead and fix that. So we're going to go drop down to its settings, copies. Let's go with 5 copies. Transform, position, we want this 0. So it's back where it needs to be. And then rotation, we start getting this nice pattern here. 30 degrees looks alright. So we're just going to adjust the size of this till it looks pretty good. If we turn off the proportional grids, we have a nice looking shield. So now is to split these into different layers so that we can sort of get a 3D shield going on. For now, we're just going to turn off this shape layer, and we're going to split this into different sections. So we have this inner layer here, a bit of a middle, so a middle layer here, and then a bit of an outer ring around there. Alright, so I made a few adjustments to my shield. I'll probably skip all that. Again, just sort of go back into the circle pattern, adjust it however you want until it looks somewhat nice. So now that you've got your shield just the way you want it, let's go ahead and pre-compose this layer right here so that we can start splitting this into multiple sections. So I'm just going to call it split. Probably going to rename it to something else. Move all attributes, hit OK. Duplicate these twice. I'm going to name one inner split, middle split, and lastly outer split. Split. Oh yeah, okay. Thought I spelled split wrong. Okay, so I'm just gonna rearrange the layers so they're sort of in their respective positions, and I'm gonna select the inner split and I'm gonna solo it. This is what this does. So I'm gonna solo that so we can only see just this layer, and what we want is we just want this circle right here. So that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna hit Q till we get an ellipse tool, and just roughly near the center, click Control and Shift so it's a perfect circle, and that looks pretty good. So great, now we just have the inside. Next we just want this here, this section here. So what I'm gonna do, actually, I'm gonna cheat a little. I'm gonna press on this mask, Control C, and then I'm gonna paste into this middle layer. Did it work? Control V. Hold on, let me do it again. Control C, Control V. Alright, cool. So that worked, but what we're gonna do, instead of add, we're gonna subtract. So we want to remove that inner bit. So now we just have these two sections. But now I want to get rid of this section here. So we're gonna add a new mask. So I'll add a proportional grid just for reference. Shift, Control, and drag. So for this mask, we want to intersect. So now we just have this middle layer. So we're going to do that one more time. Actually, just to save time, I'm going to actually go to that mask again. So mask 2, so which was this one here. I'm going to Control C, Control V, and then what I want to do is hit M to see all the masks. We're going to subtract all of that. So now we just have this outer ring. And to finalize everything, we're going to give this a little bit of an animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate all these layers just slightly. If we go into this hamburger type icon here, go to composition settings, look at the time, set it to 10 seconds. I know it's going to be longer than 10 seconds. Okay, cool. I'm going to have to adjust these to 10 seconds as well. This is just to extend the time of the composition so that we can add in a cool animation. So let's start with the inner layer. We're going to hit R for rotate. We're going to hit the stopwatch, and that sets a keyframe in the beginning. We're going to go all the way to the end and just rotate it clockwise. How fast is that? Alright, that's looking pretty good. So I set it to 110 degrees clockwise rotation, and then we're going to hit R on the next layer, rotate, and then we're going to go the opposite direction. So probably negative 110, I would assume. How does that look? Alright, cool. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing. Actually, what I might do is Control C and Control V just to save time. Hey, that's rotating at the same speed. And then I'm going to copy this rotation, paste it in the outer split. So now we should have a fully rotating shield. And that is the shield set up. Okay, so we got our shield set up. Now we're gonna work with some actual footage. So before I import the footage, I'm just gonna clean this up and put all these compositions into the comp folder. And let's go ahead and import some footage. Let's see, where is it at? Footage. Okay, cool. And we're gonna put that into media. Alright, so now we're gonna go ahead and click and hold, and we're gonna drag it into the composition icon. So now we have a composition that's just as long as the footage, with the same frame rate, same resolution, everything's done for you. So I'm gonna just drop this into the third. And whoops, hold on, let me drop the volume. Let's go ahead and take a look at the footage. So nothing's really happening. We're just setting up. So first thing we gotta do is go ahead and crop all this to the section that we want. So here's the original footage. And let's go. So let's go ahead and crop out what we don't need. We're gonna start there. And we're just gonna get to the beginning, click on it, and then while holding shift, that'll attract it or magnet to where the cursor is, and then we're gonna drag this to the beginning. Holding shift, that'll snap to the beginning. So we have that, and let's see, where do we want this to end? Just right around here is good. So looks like the whole footage is just under 4 seconds. So what I'm doing right here is I'm going to drag this, holding shift, and then we're going to right click and trim comp to work area. So now it's just this that we're looking at. So how does this look? So you can kind of tell this bit here was a bit slow. So I actually sped that up a bit. So let's see, right around here. So what I like to do is, while the cursor's here, Control Shift D, and then click on this first layer here, time, stretch. We're going to speed this up a little bit. So you want it to stretch less, so therefore 80%. Okay, cool. We're going to snap that there. Alright, is that good enough? Yep, that looks good. Okay, cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and crop this, and we should start. So now that we have our footage sorted out, the next thing we got to do is to track the arm so we can put the shield there. So that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to track motion. We'll give the source. Yep. So this will be our first point. So normally the track motion feature is meant to do the tracking for you. Like with this symbol here, this is what helps you track a certain point across footage. So so let's say I wanted to track this section here. If I pressed play, it's going to track that, if you know what I mean. But unfortunately, we didn't have the best tracking points because there's so much happening. There's so much movement. There's only so much After Effects can pick up. So I actually had to manually position this icon here. So before I start doing that, so we have position ticked. We're also gonna have rotation because we want 2 points to track. Now what we did was, it's hard to see actually, but we put a marker on Mitch's arm so that I could use that for reference. So we have this here. You probably didn't notice in the original, and I didn't even bother removing it because it was so small. So we have the watch, and we have this point here. So those are the 2 points that I'm going to be following. Let's go to the beginning, to where we can see it first, kind of. So I'm using these boxes to just position these just the area that needs to track. So that's, yeah, so it's very rough. If I go back to the composition, put this to third, it'll be a little bit easier to see things. So let's go ahead and go back to the tracking. Hold on, let's see. Here we go. Cool. Alright. So it's a tiny bit easier to see. So let's go ahead and start doing this frame by frame. So I'll probably fast forward this. Before I fast forward, I'll show you what I do. So I have these in the proper position. We're just gonna analyze one frame forward. Cool. So it managed to actually stick to the watch, but not quite to the second marker. So that's when I have to readjust things. I've renamed the one that I wanted to track. You don't want to track this one because that's at 20% speed. So we have to track this one. So I'll come back when I've finished this. So to make things worse, the second tracker disappears for a bit because it's covered by the arm. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the tracking that I've done here. So it looks pretty good. Again, it doesn't really have to be perfect. You definitely get away with a lot of movement. So cool, so we've got that done, and now we have to transfer that tracking data to something called a null object. So what I've done is I'll go ahead and just show you how to make a null object. You gotta click new and hit null object. I'm just gonna rename this shield track. So here's the point where I start tracking. I'm gonna go ahead with the null object, match that, and it goes all the way to the end, so I don't need to crop the end. So now we have to go ahead and transfer that information over. What we have to do, for some reason this was under raw, not sure why, so you want track type to be transform, you want to edit the target to be the shield track. We're gonna go ahead and click apply. Apply dimensions, X and Y, that's what you want. So let's go ahead and hopefully that worked. So hopefully, like, you don't have to do what I had to do. You can set up your footage much better for tracking, but sometimes it's hard to avoid. So hey, that's looking pretty good. It's sticking to the arm, and now we can go ahead and add the shield to it. Okay, before I move forward, I'm just gonna go ahead and clean things up. I'm just gonna go ahead and pre-comp this footage, just so it's just under one layer. Move all attributes. So this next bit is a little bit challenging, but if you can get it right, it's really cool. So now the next thing we have to do is to try and get the shield to move with the arm and make it look cool. There you go. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so what we'll do is we're going to get this shield layer that we've made. We're going to select all of it. We're going to press Control C, and then we're going to paste it in here. See if that worked. Alright, cool. So it did work. Nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjust the scale by pressing S while everything's selected, and just a size that looks pretty good. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and select these, hit S again to clean that up. So now the next thing we got to do is to make the shield look a little bit 3D, which is sort of what I did. What you will want to do next is turn these layers into 3D. So what you want to do is toggle switch until you see these icons here. What you want to do is switch all these this cube here represents 3D, so you want to check all these so they're 3D. So, and temporarily, next what we're going to do is parent these layers to just one of the sections of the shield. So I only have to control one to control all of them. So here's the pick whip. This is what parents the layer to the parent layer. So whenever I move the parent layer, the child layer moves with it. So I'm going to go ahead and parent all these layers to the inner split, and we're going to adjust this shield so it's kind of looks, you know, at the correct perspective. So we're going to hit R for rotation, and we're going to go mess with just the orientation. Actually, hold on. Where did it start? Where's the tracking? So it starts here. So let's use these arrow keys to move the shield roughly in the right position. Make sure the parent layer, which is the inner split layer, and we're just going to change the orientation so it looks about right. Let's see. Okay, we're getting there. It's getting there. Next thing we want to do is to make the shield look 3D. So with everything parented to the inner split, what we're going to do is we're going to move it slightly further away than it needs to be. So around there. And then we're going to go ahead and move these individual layers down in the z-axis or depth. So we have the outer layer. So we want this to be at the very bottom because we kind of want this kind of curved look with the shield. So we're going to bring this down. Not too much, just slightly with each layer. So it kind of has this nice curvature look to it. Alright. Now this might need some slight adjusting. Might move the inner split a bit further forward. Because everything's partnered to that, I'm going to have to unparent all these layers so I can move the inner split individually. Okay, how's that looking? I'm going to move it down slightly, the whole shield. So let me just parent all the elements again. And we're just going to move the y-axis slightly down. Really just eyeballing it. Let's go ahead and match these to the null. Now we need to parent this shield to the null that we've made with the tracking data. So we're going to parent the inner split that has all these other layers as children to the shield track. And then let's actually see how it looks. So it's getting there. Let's say we just have the footage. Let's look at the footage. And then just use this watch as a reference. So it's pointing up right now, but somewhere maybe it's pointing slightly towards the camera, but up here it's facing up. And right now the shield isn't doing that as well, so it needs to do that as well. So that's what we're gonna go ahead and fix. What we have to do next is animate the rotation. So we're gonna hit R on the inner split, and we're just gonna animate the orientation. So let's see what we have. So right now it's looking further. Let's see. So it's looking almost directly upwards, while the shield is currently looking more towards the camera. So we need to fix that. So we don't want to fix the Z, not the Y, the X-axis. There you go. So now you kind of have this. So now it's moving. So now at this point, now it's pointing this way. So let's go ahead and fix that. So we don't want to fix the Y, or the Z-axis, I mean. And that looks pretty good. Now it's facing this way. So now see, look, it's so now it's facing where it needs to face, if you get what I mean. So now it's come together. So I'm going to do that for the rest of the footage. Alright, so that is come together. It needs a little bit of polishing in the positioning, so that's what I'll go ahead and do. So we're gonna keyframe the position as well, so it looks like where it needs to be. So here it moves a little bit too far up, so we're gonna adjust it a bit further down. And it needs to be over here. Alright, cool. How does that look now? Alright. And just so the animation doesn't look as jaggedy, what we're going to do is hit U to see all the keyframes in that layer. U. Now we're going to highlight all these keyframes that we just made, and then we're going to hit FN F9. Or just F9, so that we get these kind of, well, they call it Bezier keyframes. So that kind of like, rather than it linearly moving, it's really hard to explain, but it sort of transitions between keyframes a bit more smoothly. That looks pretty good, not too bad. Just so we can move the whole shield a little bit further away from the arm, but we don't want to affect the keyframes. Just highlight all the position keyframes, because that's what we're going to modify a little bit. Just move it up slightly. That should look pretty good. Nice. Alright, so we're almost there. We've pretty much just done probably what's the hardest part of this whole tutorial. So now the rest of it is just adding some cool filters, some color, some glow. So first I'm just going to go ahead and clean this whole thing up. The shield ready to go. We can go ahead and pre-comp that and all its attributes. So we're just going to call that Magic Shield. I'm just going to go ahead and decrease the opacity so we can see the shield better, because we're going to add some cool subtle effects to it. And start with roughen edges in the effects panel. I'm going to drag that to the shield. It's mainly the border you sort of want to. So here's the before and after. It looks a lot rougher now. So with this, we're going to go ahead and animate the border to the point where every time the shield gets hit, it sort of like glitches out. It's sort of like it's weakening. So we sort of want to emphasize that impact. So here's what we're going to do. So we have the shield. From the start, actually, we want him to spawn the shield. So we don't want it just popping out. So we'll just go ahead and add a stopwatch to the border. We're going to add a keyframe. And let's see. We're going to go to the start, and we're just going to, let's see, to the point where it's invisible, basically. Rather than using just the simple opacity effect. Actually, let's make it a bit slower. Let's just make it all glitch out and stuff. And cool. Add another keyframe. And just after it, it's going to weaken again, so we're going to increase the border. Alright, make it spawn back, 0.5. 0.5 is really like just where the shield is. Alright, let's see. Alright, boom. Alright, so right before the hit, we're going to add another keyframe by clicking on the diamond, and just after it, we're going to make it disappear again. And then make it reappear again. 0.5. Alright, we'll stick with that for now. Next thing we gotta add is adding a bit of color to the shield. So, effect preset I use is Color Vibrance. It doesn't come with After Effects as soon as you download it. It's a Video Copilot plugin. Luckily it's free, so you can go ahead and download it from the internet, install the plugin, and it's a really handy plugin for adding color to to some effects. Like right now, it's defaults on lime green, but we don't want lime green. We just want a nice orangey, yellowy color. Alright, cool. So the next thing we gotta add is a little bit of glow. This is gonna make the shield pop a little bit more. Add some glow. And what we're gonna do is A and B colors. And then we can sort of choose the two colors that we want. So a lighter color would be pretty good orange, yellow I mean. And then press OK, and then a color B, bit more on the reddish end. And we're gonna go ahead and mess with glow intensity and radius. Now it's looking a lot less white now, so that's good. Next thing we add is some Gaussian blur. I don't know. I really don't know how to pronounce that. But yeah, this blur. Add a little bit of this. Alright, just at full for now. We just want to slightly blur because, hold on, let me decrease. Because everything's not like 100% sharp, you sort of want your effects to match that. So we'll bring that down and we'll add a little bit of blur. 1.5. 1.5 is alright. So let's see how that looks. Everything together. Alright, not too bad. So the next thing we're going to do is change the blending mode of the shield. So we're going to toggle switches, mode, and it's either add or screen that I usually go between. Let's see. I think add looks pretty good here. Cool. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of sort of distortion. It's kind of hard to describe. Like there's a little bit of electricity running through the shield. So we're going to go ahead and do that next. Lower the opacity for the footage so this is a little bit easier to see. And for now we're also going to turn off roughen edges just so we can perfectly see what's going on with the effect that I'm about to apply. So what we're going to do is going to go to layer new solid and we're going to call this noise. Fractal noise to this. In the fractal noise, let's mess with the scale a little bit. Around 40. 40 looks pretty good. Oh, maybe 30. You'll see what I mean. So 30. And then we're going to mess with the evolution. So we're going to go to the beginning of the timeline. Hit stopwatch for the evolution. Hit U to see the keyframe. Go all the way into the composition. And just crank up the evolution. We want it to be a little bit zippy. So I don't know if that's the best word to describe it. Something like that. Yeah. Decrease the scale a little bit. So it kind of looks like TV noise. So now we're going to turn that layer off. And go to the magic shield. Back to the magic shield layer. We're going to add something called noise displacement. Or, let's see, what is it? Displacement map. Sorry. So we're going to add that. Go ahead and pre-comp this. Noise displacement. Move all attributes. Press OK. So instead we're going to use the noise displacement. We're going to disable the noise displacement layer. And let's see how this actually affects. See, now we sort of get this like cool distortion effect that we're getting in the shield. Alright, so now it's looking pretty good. I'm actually going to duplicate this magic shield layer and disable displacement map. And then, so that way we have two layers. One that's like sort of distorted a lot, and then one that isn't. So let's see, how far can we go with this? I don't want to go too far. Maybe just, yeah, 10 to 10. Or maybe 8 to 8. And then now we're going to add back the rough and edges. And now we really have this cool. It's not super straight, it's not perfect, but it's like really nice and distorted. We're going to pre-comp these two magic shield layers. And we'll just call it, I don't know, shield, I don't know, something. Just shield master. since this is probably going to be the last time we're going to pre-comp this shield. Alright, so we're going to add our last few layers. We're going to add motion blur. Pixel, pixel motion blur. We're going to set the shutter angle to 90. The shield's looking a little too intense for me, so instead of the screen, we'll just add screen. Yeah, so it's not too intense. Alright, so finishing touch is to add another layer of glow. Color A and B colors, but make it a little bit more on the yellow side. Let's see, not too green. Just, yep, and just orange. Let's crank up the intensity just for now, because I can barely see anything. Not that intense, we don't need that. Let's mess with the threshold a little bit. The threshold pretty much affects how much glow occurs to things that are close together or further apart, and then radius, pretty much how far that glow emits. So now we've pretty much got all the effects down. It's just really just cleaning up. If you made it this far, props to you, because we finally reached the end. So that's pretty much how I made the magic shield effect in a short that we recently made. I'm gonna go ahead and put that somewhere on the screen, link, so you guys can watch that. I'm definitely looking forward to making any other tutorials. It doesn't have to be purely just visual effects related. So yeah, I guess I'll catch you whenever the next one comes out. Alright, see you guys.